Well, welcome to the garden life. I am so happy to report that the new flower beds are finished. There's always a few things that need to be tended to, but nevertheless, I am thrilled with the results, and so are my neighbors who have really commented on them quite a bit. So as you approach this side porch, and why I wanted this to be the opening shot is because I did something, well, I didn't intend to do, and I love the result, and I'm going to reveal that to you a little bit later. But we've got OU football, Oklahoma plays, University of Oklahoma plays Auburn today at 2:30. In fact, yesterday we had some visitors who were here from Tennessee who came by the cottage because their nephew is a coach with Auburn. So a rivalry. So we've got that to look forward to today. I do want to give you a tour of the new beds and maybe show you a few places where pumpkins landed. So what do you say?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, we may think fall is about pumpkins, and indeed it is, but it's also an optimal time, especially in the South, to do lots of fall gardening because planting is just a wonderful thing to consider in the South in the fall because it helps all of those root systems get established before the heat of summer hits. They have all winter long to settle in, and then hopefully next spring they will all just explode. So let's take a look and a slow reveal of the extension of the Autumn's Edge, which originally I thought would just stop at the end of this first section of brick wall. But Stuart's going to show you, as he walks along the wall, he's going to expose the new flower bed and how it looks like a seamless continuation of the garden beds along Autumn's Edge and then the new planting area. Well, as most of us gardeners know, good garden design is all about working a formula. But first you have to know what elements are going to go into that formula before you can execute the plan. Well, my overall intention, I think, was I wanted it to look as much of the same language as the front and side garden beds as possible. I didn't want it to have a whole different language of plant material. So I think we've been able to accomplish that. And the basic elements of this new flower bed relied heavily on evergreens and blooming shrubs, which I think is one of the best ways to have lots of impact with little work. Now, many of you pointed out that working on this incline would be difficult for doing things like lots of deadheading or pinching back or even pruning, and I took that into account when we selected all of these plants. So let's work the formula, and let me tell you, each one of my plant selections, starting with all of the brilliant contributors from the Southern Living Plant Collection. And number one, that would be the Sunshine Ligustrum. Now this one is still recovering because I transplanted it, but I think it's going to be fine overall. I wanted that same punchy glow that the front bed has working down this east side. So that was kind of my starting point. I wanted three really expressive, really dramatic Sunshine Ligustrum. So I've got three of those in the bed, and they are planted equidistant to each other and from both ends. And then, of course, I couldn't do any kind of garden design without boxwoods for a number of different reasons. One is my number one favorite plant, but number two, it's because there's so much boxwood in the front. I wanted to continue it down here. And I also, it was as much a priority along this edge as it is in the front that I have really good winter interest. And so these better boxwoods, these are all Skylight, by the way. And Stuart, right here, let's put up a plant profile of Skylight better boxwood. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It is blight resistant, it is tough. I have not had, I take that back, out of all the better boxwood that I have planted here at the cottage, I've only had one death. That is just how sturdy they are. And these will be beautiful here. These on the lower level, I can easily trim in the spring or even a little bit in the summer without even having to break a sweat because they'll just be here at ground level. Those on the upper edge, I will allow to get a lot taller and reach more their optimal height, even as much as up to 6 feet tall if I choose. And I won't have to prune them nearly as much because they are going to get tall and I think really, really ground this space. So those are my two first elements, and thank you, Southern Living Plant Collection. Sunshine Ligustrum, just for really, really great colorful foliage and drama. And number two, better boxwood for evergreen presence, for constancy, reliability, and that deep green beauty. Okay, the next element, well, I have decided, and it is official, my second favorite shrub after boxwood is Abelia. I think they are one of the most underused plants out there. There are so many different varieties at Southern Living. Stuart, right here, let's put a little bit of what Lemon Lane looks like right now, because those arching stems with the white blooms is just fabulous. Pollinators love it, butterflies love it. Well, and let me tell you, all of my neighbors really love it. So that was going to be my next component that I want to lend romance and softness and a little bit of great contrast between this and the evergreens. So in my imagination, this corner is just going to be filled with this Radiance Abelia. We'll put a link to all of these below, and these canes will start arching out and they will just be fluffy white blooms that, oh my goodness, when the monarchs come through, I want to bring those monarchs down from the front and I want them to come down into the alley. So a certain amount of rhythm and repetition. You can see up and down the alley space, which interestingly to me is maybe makes more of a difference than this along the east side. And it's been commented on by my neighbors a lot more, I think because it creates a grand entrance maybe into the alley. And what wasn't such a much before becomes something. It becomes an event to enter the alley. So I've got these Radiance Abelias running up and down the north side. Here I've got 1, 2, 3. I want all of these to grow together in a fabulous mound. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I've got 11 of them. And when they're all in bloom, they are going to give lots of softness, lots of arching forms that will contrast with the evergreen forms of the better boxwood. And my next element, these Oakland hollies. So I want this whole area to be solid green. I don't want you to ultimately see any of the concrete wall behind it, and I want this whole corner to really ground this space and really make a statement. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about that. In the past, my go-to holly that will reach a large size, a good mature size, has been Nellie Stevens, and I still love them. But I think because of the shape of these Oakland hollies, which tend to grow a little bit more in a pyramidal fashion, a little bit more conical and narrow at the top, they really have maybe taken over as my preference of choice for a holly. These have beautiful berries on them, and in the wintertime, I think with just a dusting of snow, this is going to be absolutely fantastic. I even am considering, I talked to Kayla about this, maybe even putting some white lights on them at Christmas time, which would really make this whole area stand out. So I'm still thinking about that. These two will all grow together. So not a lot of trimming on them, not a lot of pruning on them. I want them all to grow together. And I think that will really, really ground this space and hide some of the uglies that you can still see if you kind of peer through. Now along here, so I've got 3 in the corner. I've got 2 Nellie Stevens. I wanted just a little bit different, fatter form here to cover up the trash cans. So on this side and in punctuating the other side, I have 2 Holly Stevens, or 2 Nellie Stevens Hollies. But then something else that I did was, you may recognize these guys. These were way overgrown. These are Irish mint euonymus, again from Southern Living. They were growing in the window box, and you can see from their size here how massive they got and why they needed to be relocated. So here I've done kind of a staggered evergreen thing. Evergreen in the back, evergreen in the front, evergreen in the back, in the front, in the back, and then kind of consuming that whole corner. So that was the intention of my garden design. And these eventually will also get big and cascade over the wall. So there will be not only evergreen presence, but I think there's going to be lots of movement, lots of contrast, lots of delicacy, lots of romance, and lots of pollinator goodness. Now, I wanted another Nellie to anchor this corner, and I can hear you saying, Linda, these are all planted too closely together. Well, I want them all to grow together. So eventually you will see no soil at all. If you haven't watched my video on overplanting, you might want to watch it. But this in particular looks like it's too close. But what I'm probably going to do over time is prune up this holly. That's really a common practice with these Nellie Stevens Hollies, and I think I'll probably prune it up from the bottom, exposing its trunk, and then this will have room to cascade in both directions. And I think it'll be beautiful, and it will punctuate this corner just like the trio of these Radiance Abelia punctuated that corner. Okay, now for some fun. In comes the color and a lot more drama and a lot more repetition of what I've got going up here closer to the front of the cottage. Now this area is pretty phenomenal, if I do say so myself. And I think a little bit unexpected, because most people expect beauty in their front yard, but to continue it down the side, I think is just an added little perk. And right now, at this time of year, starting I would say in July, when these moon dance hydrangeas come into bloom, and they are fabulous. Let me repeat that again. They are absolutely fabulous. These come into bloom, and then in late summer and into fall, this Carnation Encore Azaleas, one of my 2 favorites, comes into bloom. And what I love is now they are doing what I hoped they would do, and they're starting to merge together. And the Carnation Azalea is starting to come up and through the moon dance hydrangeas. So see these canes right here? They may not be blooming, but these are azalea canes. So they will come up and kind of insinuate themselves into that moon dance hydrangea. Let me get this volunteer out of here while I'm never walked by a weed. And there's this wonderful color echo between the pinkish cast of the hydrangea blooms when they dry and this Carnation Encore Azalea. And in fact, I ran into somebody at Lowe's this past week, and they had 3 Carnation Encores in their cart, and they said, Linda, thanks to you, I'm getting 3 of these at your recommendation. So I think they're beautiful. They may be a little bit atypical colorful for fall, but I think that makes them that much more unexpected and that much more dramatic. So now that we've seen this walkway and how it continues all the way down the side of the house behind the viburnum.
That's blooming weirdly.
That's blooming weirdly, but we'll take it. I still haven't put anything in this pot yet. But this continues, I think, flawlessly the same look. And if you stand at the end of the corner of Dewey and 18th Street and you look down this way and you see a hint of this, if you're just at that angle, you can see that it looks very harmonious and very fluid, at least in my book. That's my question of the day. You guys let me know if you like our ultimate garden design, if it's something that you might replicate. And we're going to try to put this in some kind of graphic form. So indeed, if you want to replicate this entire composition in an awkward spot at your house, then you could do that. So let's just rewind for a minute. Stuart, right here, let's put up some befores, and then you can see the after of what this looked like. Well, even before I moved in, you may recall that the fence just went up to the top of that fence line, but there was no lattice work. And this had just some kind of very thin and dying Bermuda grass because it gets lots of shade from the cedar trees. So we killed that out with black plastic and solarization. Then we dug it out. Then we came back, and by we, yes, I mean Kayla and Cityscapes, came back in and added lots of rich mix. Then we planted the plants. I positioned all of them. Then we put them in the ground, and then we came back with about 2 inches of compost, and that's going to be our mulch. So let's talk azaleas again. So as I said, we repeated these beautiful pink Encore Azaleas. These two will get tall, but remember the Skylight Better Boxwood in the back will also get tall. So all of this is going to be in the same composition it is now, only taller and bigger and wider. So ultimately, again, you won't see any dirt, or at least that's my dream. Okay, so more gorgeous Encore Azaleas. These even have more buds on them, so I'm hoping they'll be in bloom for the garden tour. And then, speaking of azaleas, my second favorite category of Encore Azaleas, and that is any of the white ones. I don't care if it's Autumn Moonlight, if it's Autumn Ivory, if it's Autumn Lily. I really don't care. I love all of them. This is Autumn Ivory, and I have them in different kind of punctuating clumps. I've got one here, I've got one here, I've got one here, I've got one here, and these in a very rhythmic fashion up and down the entire length will bloom in white. And what I really like is when they overlap in bloom with the white of the azaleas with then the pure white of the white wedding hydrangeas, which is the next dramatic element of this entire border. And Stuart, right here, let's put some pictures of the white wedding hydrangeas in the front yard in full bloom, because they are breathtaking. Again, they will continue to grow in both height and girth, as will everything around them. And I think it's going to be really spectacular. Now, when we come back, let's talk a little bit about some of the things we need to take into account when we are transplanting and planting a new bed in any season. Now, I actually missed a step when I was describing the chronology of everything we did here. After the plants were in place and before we put down the top dressing of compost as mulch, we ran drip line, and there is drip line running parallel all up and down this edge. I believe we put in 3 linear sections of it, and we might even add a 4th. We're just going to kind of test it and see. The reason being, and only 3, is because the water will run downhill. And even though we're in full sun right now, in short order, about 2/3 of the interior of this is going to be in shade. We did make sure that when we dug each hole, that we really watered the hole itself, that we watered all of the plants before we planted them. We also gave them some Super Thrive, and I'll try to remember to give you a link to that here to help them get established. But even with all of that vigilance, in the fall, when it's it was upper 80s, low 90s yesterday, some things are going to complain at first. And that's just the rub, especially when you're transplanting something, but also when you're planting them just out of their pots. So I'll make sure to keep watering them until they get established. Some additional watering might need to be in order, and I will try to be attentive to that. Again, I debated whether or not to switch this one out for another one that I can transplant, but this one is clearly still alive, and this is the size and shape that I want. And I think the rest of it, did you see where I did that right there? You can see the green.
Oh, clearly.
And I think the rest of it, the rest of the border itself looks beautiful enough that it kind of detracts from the fact that this is a little bit crispy and brown. So because I'm thinking about the future as well as the present, and even though I want everything to look great for the garden tour, I am willing for this one to look less than its best, because next year I think it will be absolutely spectacular. And by the way, from this lower level, if I want to keep this limbed up, one of my favorite things to do that will be very easy work, even more so than where it was before, where I had to bend down. Here it is just at arm level, and I think it's going to be delightful. So let's recap. What was my formula for this bed, consisting largely of Southern Living Better Boxwood and Encore Azalea plants? So I had, starting with the Evergreens, and that was the Oakland Hollies, and Stuart right here, let's put the number of them. Then I had a background of the Better Boxwood. All of them were Skylight. They're absolutely gorgeous. Love, love, love them. Did I say I loved them? And here's how many of those we had. Then I came in, and it's all about layering and all about bloom against evergreen structure, as I've said before, but I don't think it can be said enough. Then I came in with a beautiful rhythm and repetition of Radiance Abelia. Now I used Radiance because I've already used Miss Lemon Abelia and Kaleidoscope Abelia, and I love both of them, but I wanted something that was similar, but just a little bit different, because I wanted to see what it would do. It will continue to bloom in the beautiful pollinator-friendly white blooms like the front, but it'll be just a little bit different for me and a new experience. So I had this many Radiance Abelia. And then we came in with some perky and gorgeous Encore Azaleas that repeat bloom spring and fall, and for me, late summer. And so I had this many autumn carnation, and I had this many white ones. And then the final component was some a sprinkling of beautiful white wedding hydrangeas. All of these plants are in the front yard, so it seems very, very reflective of the design that I've already got going there. This one is a little bit more structured, a little less gardening, and a little more landscapey, so that it doesn't have quite as much maintenance involved, but I think it's going to be breathtaking. So Stuart, right here, let's put the formula. We had hollies, we had Better Boxwood, we had Abelias, we had Carnation and Autumn Ivory Azaleas, and we had white wedding hydrangeas. I'm running out of arm room, but let's put that mathematical formula up right here, and then we'll also give you some dimensions as to how long and deep these spaces were. So if you want to replicate the entire formula, you can do that. The area that I'm most anxious to fill in is this space right here. I want that boxwood to get big. I want this Nellie and this Abelia to start kind of flowing over the side so that you don't see this small amount of metal edging that we've got in here. I'm not a fan of metal edging, so for me to obscure it is imperative. So I can't wait for this whole area to soften. But now walk with me, and I want to show you something that I wasn't expecting to do, even though it was part of my original design when we first came up with this idea for these beds at the cottage. I didn't execute it, but now I'm so glad that I did. And well, should we wait and show it?
Time.
You think it's time? Okay. So we put 2 Oakland Hollies on either side of the entrance to the side porch and right in front of the steps. And Stuart, right here, you can see what it looks like from the street. And I think it really beautifully frames this whole area. It fills up a lot of this this expanse of nothing but green. These will get tall and grand, and I think they will look absolutely lovely. And what I like about this is not only does it repeat some of the evergreens that I've got at my house, but Stuart, if you turn around, you can see the hollies that run up and down the west facade of my sweet neighbors across the street. And they've got them running all up and down. You can see how some of their hollies have been limbed up. Those are Nellie Stevens, have been limbed up. And I just think it just repeats the language of these old houses in this old historic neighborhood. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little garden design tutorial at the cottage on the hill. I didn't realize that I wanted to do that until I did, and I think it makes a huge, huge difference. And a huge shout out and thank you to Southern Living Plants and Better Boxwood and Encore Azalea for the wonderful, wonderful plant material that they grow and provide to all of us. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at the links below, where I think we've got pretty much everything linked there. And if you want to get some of them for your own gardens, you'll be able to. And if you like this kind of material, please make sure to give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and most importantly, share with anyone who might want a smile today. So as you live your garden life from my cottage to yours, have a great Sunday. So I still have the back to do, and we'll go back to bricks to get more pumpkins, but I wanted to show you where they ended up. So the corn ended up in kind of a swag on my front door. My front door is in this glass door is in desperate need of some work, and we are tending to that. But I think the swag looks pretty. It's all purple garnet, really deep, deep hues. And then, as I think I mentioned, I wanted for the front all pale and white and gray pumpkins. And so these are kind of cascading down the front. A few are tucked hither and thither. I don't know if that's a word or not. At the base, or I should say at the top, depending on which direction, at the top, I have a trio, my topiary trio, with some dried iris leaves in here to mimic the look of corn stalks. I've got my topiary here. I put my clump of pumpkins on the berm. I decided to put them on this side, and I elevated one of them on a plant stand, by the way. I've got a couple more down here just to kind of define this space. And let's see, what else do I have? Stuart, meet me back up here. And as you can see, it looked like I had a ton of pumpkins, and I did, but when you start setting them out in the landscape can easily absorb them. And my next project, which I will probably include you in, is to redo my window box. So I got some lime green chrysanthemums, which then I will later plant out in my yard. It's one of my smart gardening tips for fall flowers, and that is you may want to buy something that you will want to be a permanent fixture in your garden. And I did that with some white mums, and here are some probably kind of a chartreusey lime green. So I'm going to put 2 of these in the window box. I'm going to transplant some better boxwood cones into the boxwood, and then I will tuck some gourds and things. The green on green I think might be really rich and interesting. And then I'll finish this vignette, and then I have to do the back and just a little bit more zhuzhing here and there. And then I'm going to call it good for the garden tour, which I hope you can attend on October 4th, starting at 10 o'clock. You could buy tickets when you get here, or we will put a link in the description box below. So there you go. Thank you guys for pumpkinizing with me. It was fun. I always love going to Bricks, and a huge thank you to Bricks for providing all of the pumpkins. They do such a great job, and well, it's just a joy to work with them. You guys take care.